So how does this work?
You have to have a successful podcast and then they make Funko Pops out of you. There he is. Look at this guy. How goes it?
Ready to go. Ready to go. I'm actually nervous today.
Oh my God. I got sweat on my hands. I'm nervous too. We'll get to the guest in a second. Before we get to the guest, because I do want to break down why I'm nervous and why you're nervous.
Okay.
All right, but hold on.
Yeah. What do we got?
I got something to show you. Good. Can you hear me?
You do like an old filter? Yeah, I can hear you.
Shh. No, it's on. Shh. Here, let me.
Oh my God. What? I see your Funko Pops.
Do you know what that is?
Marty Bird.
Marty Bird, and then Wendy Bird back there, and Ruth back there. But what I want to show you.
Hey, what? Rick Zakowski and Eric Jacqueline. Get out of here. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Bring it in. That's amazing. That's super fun.
Yeah, so I'm thinking our merchandise is starting to expand. We have the shirt. We have Funko Pops.
We're going to offer the Funko Pop set. Is that the plan?
We could probably charge $100 to sell these, and my mom would buy it. I'm not giving her any discounts.
That's the one we're going to make some money off of?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Well,
thanks,
who else
Diane.
Who else is buying a Rick and Eric Funko Pop?
No one. That's the funny part. My mother-in-law, May.
Let's talk about why we're nervous. I wiped the sweat off my hand.
Why are you nervous?
Well, I want to hear yours first. You know why I'm nervous, and we'll get to why I'm nervous. Why are you nervous?
I don't know. That's what this morning I was thinking about. I was like, I kind of got some butterflies going. I
got butterflies too. Woo!
I think, I don't know. I mean, I think PJ.
All right, so we're gonna have on PJ Loughran.
Yeah, thanks. Should we just throw that out there?
Yeah, PJ Loughran has 3 different categories that I think we're going to talk about today. Maybe not. He is a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He is a illustrator that has found unbelievable success. You've seen his work a million times. And then to me, which may be the most important, he is my favorite musical artist out there, surpassing one Dave Matthews.
Look at that. Which it's on the record. We'll see if you keep it in the podcast. It's on the record. We'll see if it stays in the podcast.
If we have Dave on, we may have to switch those around.
Is there a chance that I found PJ before you did?
Nope.
On Fresh Tracks?
100% no. 100% no.
Because why?
I remember the day that I found him.
Hearsay.
It is hearsay.
So music has been very influential, very much so in your life, some of mine as well. We spent a lot of time with PJ. I'm sure we'll touch on that some in the podcast or whatever. Last year, creating, just shooting with him and creating a lot of content. And he gave us like some really great, cool inside access to his life and his art and his, all sorts of stuff that was, based around his music, which was an incredible experience.
Incredible to say the least.
Yeah.
A couple things about that. So we did these little vignettes for his new album, and it just came that we reached out to him out of the blue, and it was kind of like, enough is enough. I think we need to work with them. Like we made a passionate plea that we're going to come to his place and film with him. We'll be a fly on the wall just while he's doing this. And it was really just a cold call almost, through an email, and he was receptive to it. And I think that it was, I think the fact that we've done so much in the music space that he felt a little bit comfortable, at least accepting it.
I mean, let's give credit where credit's due. This was a passion project on your end that you included me on, right? It was something, and his music has been incredibly influential, and I think we should touch on that with PJ when we get on there.
It'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, this can go a bunch of different ways.
Agreed. Yeah, there's
because he's
gonna be a lot
interesting in all facets of his life.
Yeah, no, I get it. We might need to be focused with our stuff, but
focused us. Got it.
It's an oxymoron. I get it.
All right. Here, let me write that down. Focus. Oh, here he is. Hey, wait. Are you going to ebb and flow it?
Oh, let's make this happen. Ebb and flow. Here we go.
Hey, baby, you should go back to younger days gone when the seasons ran slow. Back to every first time, back when happiness hung by the thread of a love letter vine.
Mr. PJ Loughran.
There he is.
So funny. I've been watching your show, and it's just funny. It's like I just joined an alternative universe that I've been following for the last 2 weeks. It's really funny.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. What's going on, guys?
It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, too.
I'm going to tell you right now, you may see this quite a bit. This is a napkin because I am nervous right now, and I'm wiping my hands.
Oh, my God. Are you serious? Come on.
Yeah, I am. And we were trying to dissect or analyze why I'm nervous now more than the other ones. I think when we were filming with you, I'm in my element there. Like it's, hey, we need this content, so it's not even.
We should go back to when you first came over because that's a funny story. It's like I remember that.
And here's where I leave. Why don't you guys take it from here? I'll just I'll exit out.
Can I tell the story really briefly?
Please, and then I'll follow.
From my perspective, I could tell you or Sue and my perspective. So I think I had just gotten back from work, right? And you were meeting us at the house. Because you and I had met, but Eric, you and I had met, and Sue hadn't met either of you guys. And I think we were going to figure out where to put cameras and stuff like that. And I remember you came to the door, Rick, and you were like, hey, and, you were very, friendly and happy. And I was like, really friendly. And I was sort of like, like, this guy's had a drink or two before he showed up at the house. And I said to Sue, I think Rick is drunk. And it wasn't like you weren't inappropriate or anything. Like you were really talky, and it was very charming, and you were really nice to everybody. You want to hear a funny story? The first time I ever did an open mic night in New York City, I was so nervous to get on stage so I get to the club. I remember it was this little place called the Bagot Inn, where was that? I don't think on West 4th Street or something like that, and it was an open mic night. I'd never performed, played guitar, or sang in front of an audience before. I was a saxophone player, so I was very comfortable playing sax and sort of, hiding, I guess, behind the instrument. But I'd never put myself out there before. And I show up, and the open mic night, I thought I was there on time, but I was there an hour early. So I was like, all right. So I have to just sit here. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll have a drink. And then it got closer to the time we were supposed to play, and I was getting more and more nervous. So I had another drink. And by the time I got up there, I don't think I was drunk, but I was not at my best. And then I wasn't used to a light, I don't know if you guys know this. You probably do from shooting a lot of comedians and talent and everything. But when you're on stage, lights are right in your eyes and you're blind. You can't see the audience. And I wasn't used to that either, because typically I was playing saxophone further back on the stage where I could kind of see what was going on. So the whole thing was totally disoriented. And it's drinking when you're nervous is not a good idea. It doesn't make you any better.
It's not.
But
it's really not.
But you were the exception, because you were you were super kind and charming when you came in. That was I remember that evening so well. It was really fun.
So, but that's the good news is that I just mentioned about Rick is that when he's drinking, he's usually very complimentary and flattering to whoever he's communicating with, whether that's in person or via email.
So PJ, if you get a text from me late at night one night, that there's
so
probably some alcohol involved.
You're a drunk emailer and texter.
Well, that's how this whole thing started. I was on a plane and I emailed you.
All of it. Literally everything that we did and worked on together was based on a email with cocktails on a plane.
So a couple things, because what we want to talk about on this, and we'll get to some defining
We're not
moments.
just going to talk about your drinking problem.
That's a whole nother podcast.
First off, that we don't have enough time for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So PJ, you have basically, we put it into three buckets. You are an entrepreneur, a musician, and then also an illustrator. And I want to get to all of those, but I just watched Baby Reindeer this week. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet. I was reading, there was like there was a newsletter I'm on that was like talking about it. I was like, oh, this is like a thing. So I didn't realize it was like a phenomenon or something, but I guess it is. Like a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah. And it's basically about an obsessed fan. So I was like, oh, that's me. And so when you have someone like me who, I mean, I know all the lyrics, I go way too in-depth stuff. Is it weird?
I'm sure it depends on the artist, right? But I think for me, it was like, oh, somebody's listening, right? Like whenever that has happened, it's so fulfilling because I put, I don't write sort of throwaway stuff. It's all, there's a lot of time and care put into all the words and all the different parts of it. So it felt great to know like, wow, somebody's really listening to what I'm saying. It wasn't weird. It was like, oh, you're listening. That's the best way to put it. Oh, you're hearing me. That's yes. And yes, you got that. That's what I was kind of getting at.
I think it touches on from music, which I know all of us know here, like the power of music in itself, right? So the only weirdness to me is the fact that Rick, who got to actually meet and talk with you about it, right, and like physically like interact. The majority of people have all this music and fall in love with it, memorize it. It's part of their life. It's defining in certain times in their life and that kind of stuff. And it just so happened that it was able to, all of those things could come to fruition with the person that made it, which is not the norm, right? That's, I don't know.
I've told you guys about experiences I've had like that, where I've been on your end for sure, like even freaking out. I mean, I told you guys the story about meeting Martin Sexton, who I was such a huge fan of when I was coming up. And that experience being, meeting him at his house and never having met him before and having listened to all his music and knowing all the songs and then getting to write with him. I think I told you at the end of that, right? I told you what happened. I called my wife and I said, okay, how much did you just pay someone to do that? I mean, I was dead serious. I was like, this was too awesome. This felt too great. Like, it was like a dream, the whole part of it. I don't even think Martin knows that was as impactful as it was for me. But I called Sue and I was like, so what did you like, did you just tap out our savings for that? Like, there was one night I remember I was writing with him and I was so nervous that I wasn't playing guitar well enough that I stayed up until 3:00 in the morning practicing the guitar parts because I didn't want to embarrass myself. Because I've always felt like I'm a self-taught guitar player. I'm not a very strong guitar player. I a lot of times don't even know what chords I'm playing. I like how it feels or how it sounds. And Martin's like an amazing guitar player, right? I think one of my favorite voices. So I wanted to make sure I was holding my own for the rest of the right the next day.
You know what I find helps in those situations? Let's take a step back, and it's almost we have to kind of start at the end of where you are and then kind of work our way back. So talk to me about the entrepreneurship. Funny Water. Can you talk about how that came about? Because It is blowing up.
Yeah, it's weird. This is a COVID business. That's kind of where it started. I had left my role with my previous gig where I was involved in music festivals and large scale events and a lot of that stuff. And I had this idea to start this kind of executive hospitality company, do really cool small scale experiences. And we were about 8 months in, and then, COVID hit, and like all the events we had planned, that all our revenue pretty much stopped. So I had all of a sudden had time, and I'm sure people talk about COVID in a lot of different ways. And for me, it like kind of slowed me down, which was really great. It was like time with the kids, time with Sue. It was time to reflect. It was, I ended up learning how to produce music during that time, which I think you guys know. So that I had an EP I put out called Davenport that was really just a result of me learning how to record my own music since I couldn't go to recording studios. It's missing something. There's this like other ideas that I wanted to get into here.
And I pray for my Davenports when I was writing the song, a lot of times I'll kind of mock drums up. But these are all me playing sampled drum sounds.
But Funny Water came out of that also. And so my friend Jake, who's a successful entrepreneur in the Chicago, Indiana area, and one night was like at his computer, like a lot of us has probably done, and he's like, names of new companies. Blah, 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 blah. Like he came up with this whole list of just random stuff. And some of the names are hysterical and really wacky. I've seen the whole list. He registered American Balls. And I'm like, what the hell is American Balls? He's like, I don't know. He's like, American Balls, like AmericanBalls.com. And these are all trademark names, by the way. He owns these trademarks.
It's brilliant.
And I have this idea now of like doing a boba drink called American Balls that's like really like ultra American on the outside. It's alcoholic boba. I don't know if that's going to catch on. It's probably not. I digress. So he said, I have this name, Funny Water. And I was like, huh. I was like, you mean you own that? He's like, yeah. And I said, what about the URL? He's like, I got it. And I said, well, what is it? He's like, I don't know. You want to maybe play with it and like we'll come up with some ideas for what it could be. And he did have an idea. He had this idea of like vitamin water with vodka in it. Now, ironically, Jake is not a drinker. He's sober, right? So like, I'm like, okay. And I think his notion was, well, maybe it's just a water, right? Maybe it's just a nutritional water. So that's sort of how it started. And my reaction to him initially was like, I don't know if I'm the right guy for this. I don't know anything about alcohol. But I'd been working in creating brands for many years. And I love brand making and I love design. I love a lot of those things. And I knew kind of the process to sort of get to figure this out. Like there's a research component and a study component. And then there's a design component. So I was like, well, let me think about it for a few weeks. There's already a lot out there. Where is the opportunity space in any beverage business? And we isolated these two interesting things that were happening. The first was that young people were drinking less alcohol. They weren't as interested in like getting wasted like we were when we were younger, probably because of the rise of cannabis becoming more and more legalized. But maybe also just coming out of COVID, kids were just way more health conscious. Like, oh yeah, drinking is like not a good thing to get too into, especially just before you're going to meet, someone's music that you like.
You're a hero.
First of all, never meet your hero, but never meet your hero while you're drunk.
You should make T-shirts with that. So that was like, oh, kids are drinking less, and why is there no alcoholic beverages below 14% alcohol that aren't carbonated, right? So that was like, what? That's crazy. So there was like a conventional wisdom in the alcoholic space, and there still is, that people like carbonation. They like bubbles. They put bubbles in everything. It makes it, it gives you, it's effervescent and it gives you kind of a lift when you drink it. But I don't drink bubbles anymore. I had a problem with LaCroix for a while and I had to stop drinking LaCroix because it's awful for your stomach and it erodes your teeth enamel. It like really messes with your health. So I was like, well, what about like a low alcohol, non-carbonated thing? Where's that? And it didn't exist. I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. And then the third thing was I was involved. The company I worked for before had created the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. So I was very involved in that while I was working there. And I just remember watching people. I remember going to the first aid tent once when I performed on a small stage at Bonnaroo one year. And I remember I had too much to drink the night before and went to the first aid tent, and there were like kids like just struggling, like really out of their mind. I didn't know if it was drugs. I didn't know what it was. And I went in and they gave me a B12 shot, and it kind of brought me back to life a little bit. But I got to talking with one of the doctors, and he was like, this is all dehydration. These kids aren't taking care enough of themselves. And I was like, oh my God. I always thought it was just overconsumption. But yeah, when you're out in heat for extended amounts of time, particularly at a camping festival, it's like one of the hardest things as a producer is to make sure everyone's got enough water, and there's water stations all over. But even with that, it's tough. You get involved, you're having a good time, you're up all night. So I thought, well, maybe this could be like a music festival beverage for people if they're going to be drinking for 12 hours at a stretch. And that could be people who are boating, people who are playing golf where you're out for 5 hours, something like that. Just something to help people take better care of themselves when they're drinking. So I took a name and found a purpose for it, right? The name was really great, I thought. But I had to figure out, like, is there a purpose for this? Is there any reason to do this? And we found a reason. We found a purpose for it. And it was a purpose that I felt like I could really get behind.
But how do you go from an idea of Funny Water to actually learning about how to like mix alcohol with water?
It's a bunch of puzzles. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Maybe somebody out there knows how to do that. And we found a company that helps people with ideas for alcoholic beverages get them to market. And they basically taught us sort of essentially how things work. And we paid them, consulting fees to do that. And then eventually learned how to do a lot of that on our own and pick that up. But they taught us how formulation works. They taught us what a co-packer is. I didn't know what that was. They taught us how distribution around the U.S. works, and it's state by state, and you have to license in each state, and you need a sales team going state by state. It's just learning, and I find that super interesting and fun.
But the capital behind it, you have to have capital to do all this.
Yes. Jake was the one who seeded most of the business initially, and then we raised money. And it's funny, I'd never raised money before, so there was a learning curve there. Well, how do you do that? And how do you do it legally? And what is how does all that work? So huge, in the last 3.5 years, huge learning curves on how to do that. But also, it's like I'm on the other side of a lot of that now, and I know those things. And it's like I feel like it's like going to the gym and getting bigger muscles. Like I'm like, now I have these new things that I know how to do and play around with.
What? No, I know. Sorry, Eric. I just to go along with that, the alcoholic space, and I'm talking shelf space in a grocery store, is probably as competitive as, if not the most competitive, it'd be up there with like candy. Like, how did you figure out how to get space in, like, the fact that I can now go to my local grocery store and get it?
Well, it's all over Texas now. Yeah, you guys should really
Right.
find it everywhere there now. And HEB, it's at HEB now, I think, too.
HEB, yeah.
It's, we had a sales team initially, and they weren't moving quick enough, and I ended up having to let them go, and I took it over for 3 months. And I found a list of all the best distributors in the U.S., and I just started emailing every day, and I just kept track of it, and I just kept dialoguing with them and tell the story, over and over, told the story, what we're doing and what we're about, sent them really beautiful design materials. We have a great design team that supports the brand, and it's just, you sort of will it into existence. But even that, that's a tedious process, but it's also fulfilling when it works, when you see people like, oh yeah, well, let's do this. Let's take this on. You're like, oh my God, amazing. We're going to be in this state or that state. And it's exciting to watch it sort of grow and build.
All right, last question, Eric, and Eric, last question, and then I'll let you speak. I swear to God, my wife will kill me if I don't ask this question. When you look at, even when you were doing stuff with Bonnaroo, and let's even take Funny Water right now, it's brilliant marketing. It's brilliant promotion, brilliant brand building. As an artist, how can you do that for all these other people? But then when it comes to your own stuff, it's not as, I don't want to say easy, or you don't do it as much. I don't want to say it's bad, because you did a good job promoting yourself. Clearly, we found you. But why is it that you can do it for all these other companies, but for yourself, you find it to be harder?
Oh, it's so much harder to do for I don't know. It's a great question. You and I have talked about this before. I have trouble promoting and people, if they see this, I'm like, he's just fine promoting himself. I'm like, it doesn't come. It's like, I don't know. It feels easier for other people than it does for me, and I don't understand why. I'm not good at it for myself.
It feels like humility, though, to me.
Eric, so the question is, you're saying it feels like there's like an excessive humility in it, in the way I'm describing it?
No, I think that you have humility in the sense that you don't want to promote yourself or talk, that.
Yeah, because even the way you talk about your guitar playing, PJ, how many
I'm
times
just
have I
being honest.
texted you?
That's not humility. That's straight up like,
But I'm
yeah.
telling you, as someone who plays guitar and I've talked to other guitarists, when you look at Shoebox, that is an incredibly hard song to play.
It's not I'm not bullshitting you guys with when I say some of this stuff. It's
No,
and I know that it's easy for people to, when they get interviewed, to, I think, oh, I got to be really humble here. I definitely have a good well of confidence, as I think you guys know. Like, I'm not afraid to kind of put myself out there,
Right.
but you know, at the same time, like, I also know what I know and what I don't, right? I know I have a pretty realistic sense of how good a guitar player I am. In skill sets and entrepreneurship, there's definitely things I'm still trying to get better and better at. Managing people is like one of those things that I constantly have to, it's a discipline that I've tried to get better and better at over the years. You know, uh, there's so many components of it that you work on. I try to stay clued into where I'm maybe I have deficits I have to work on, and when there's things that I think I'm doing pretty well at or I'm happy with. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense. There's a lot of talk about humility.
it does, but this goes back to, like, my wife she does 3D animation. She's awesome at it, and she could do stuff for our TV shows, but when you ask her to do something for herself, she can't do it. She can't do her own website or any of that. So I think when I talk to other artists, they have the same thing. They could do anything for anyone else, but when it comes to themselves, they hit a roadblock. And I was just trying to think, do you have the answer to that? But it sounds
I wish I had some insight into it, but it's a different part of my brain maybe that I'm putting on. Like, I'm like, oh, puzzle, I got to figure out how to get that person's thing that way. When I'm making the thing and promoting it, I think I'm more interested in the making of the thing, right? Like the writing of the song or the drawing of the thing and the picture. And there's marketing that's involved in that. I mean, you can't become, as an illustrator, you have to learn how to market yourself and how that works. So you can,
mm-hmm.
you have to understand how to get to people who are going to hire you for things. But I wish I knew. It shouldn't be more difficult, is what you're sort of saying, and I think you're right. It should be easier, but I find it really difficult.
You did this thing that I saw on Facebook where you guys had it was almost like a festival in your front yard with a bunch of bands playing, with your sons playing, and you had like the lawn.
This is what you
filled.
get for like doing lots of stuff and showing your kids, oh, anything's possible. So 3 weeks before that, my son is like, hey, Dad, by the way, we're doing that thing on whatever it was, April 13th, or whatever it was. I was like, what thing are you talking about? Remember, I'm inviting 8 bands to the house to perform. I'm like, what? And I had no memory of this. And my wife is standing right there. She's like, what? He's like, I told you guys I'm doing it. Like he's 15. He's like, what do you mean? I told you all about this. This is happening. I've told people this is happening. I'm like, whoa, okay, let's think about this. I'm like, how many bands again? He's like, 8. At first it was 6. I'm like, 6 bands. Okay. Where are they going to play? He's like, well, in the house. We're going to move all the furniture out of the living room. I'm like, how many people? He's like, 100 to 130. I'm like, I don't know how big you think this home is, but there's no way we're fitting that many people in the house. We're doing it on the porch. He's like, but it's going to be cold. What if it rains? Like, so nevertheless, the weather was great. We brought our PA out on the front porch. We set it up, and these bands all came by, and we had 150 kids on the front lawn. Sue ordered a porta potty, which I was like, a porta potty? Yes, a porta potty will be, if we do this again, will definitely be ordered, because that was a very good move on her part. But we threw a little music festival on the front porch, and it was incredible. It was like, for me, dream come true, watching my son playing all these bands, watching all these musicians get up and play, these kids just putting themselves out there. All the kids that watched, just watching them, it was like a 3 or 4 hour event. It was so fun. It was so great.
Did the neighbors say anything?
I was going to say, did you tell the neighbors? Did you invite them?
So Sue sent an email out to all the neighbors saying, hey, we're doing this. Just let you know, it's going to be this between these hours. And emails back were like, oh, thank you so much for letting us know. We really appreciate it. Good luck with the concert. Very polite, And we did the show, and we noticed, like, across the street, this older elderly woman is sitting on her deck listening, and then the next house we're like, oh, there's a
Oh, that's
family watching the
great.
show, and we're like, oh, I guess people are enjoying it, and nobody complained. And then the next morning, I'm walking the dog, and one of the neighbors said, how did the concert go? I was like, oh, it was really great. I said, thanks so much for, I know it was loud. She's like, what are you talking about? When are you doing this again? That was the coolest thing that's happened in this neighborhood ever. She's like,
That's
what? I mean,
awesome.
you guys are going to do more of these, right? And we're like, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I guess we are. But we were terrified that we were going to be like that
Yeah.
family on the block that
Yeah.
that made too much noise. But
Wow.
everybody's been so cool about it, and we're probably going to do
That's-
another one this summer, I think. So,
That's really cool.
but that notion, that what made me happy was he was like, "Oh yeah, we're just going to do this." Like that notion of like, that's not hard. Let's just do it. Great. Like more of that, right? I want the kids to have that notion. Oh, well, we could just do this. Let's just make it happen.
Can we shift a second?
Yeah.
Music.
We chased the dogma to the doghouse. I've bowed my head to better men. And now my bookshelf bends from all the weight of giants. And all I've got is backache out and some sad bohemian friends.
Where did you write that?
In New York. I think there's a sense when you're younger that there's like a way. You got to learn from people. You go to college, you study under masters and people are really better at things than you are. And you're looking for I want to be that. How do I do that? And this person is going to show me the way to do that. And I remember I went to Parsons in New York for art school, which was an incredible school. Very competitive. I found it to be very competitive. And you had a lot of teachers who were professional artists, professional illustrators, very successful. A lot of them had, they were well known, like big name people in the space. And, there were some teachers who were very dogmatic, like this is the way, this is how you do it. And, and then others who were more open and like, well, you got to find your way. There's a lot of ways to do this. And I have this sort of, I don't like dogma. I don't like anyone telling me that this is what you do. You have to go do this, and that's how you get there. I've always had I kind of recoil from that when it comes at me. Like, well, if you want to become a thing, you got to do this, and then you do this. I just don't believe that. And I've avoided that. So I think there's this notion of following the way or a philosophy towards something down a path. And I just found like anytime I did that, it led to dead ends for me. So that's what that line means. Chase the dogma to the doghouse, right? I also just like dog and dog there are two words that have dog in them that mean very different things that I thought was kind of cute, right? I bowed my head to better men, I think is the next one. Yeah. That's that notion of like, I went to school and show me the way. Oh, great. Sage. And learning that that's not, ultimately you read these books and you collect these philosophies and you want to like learn and you want to get smarter. And if I'm smarter, then I'll get the thing that I want. If I just like put time into the work. So, and now my bookshelf bends from all the weight of giants, but it hasn't really gotten me anywhere that makes me happy, right? All I've got is this backache knot, I think it is.
Yep.
And some sad bohemian friends, right? So
yeah.
I also knew a lot of kids in school who were just like miserable and just depressed. And they just were like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be, blah, and I've always generally been a pretty upbeat person, as I think you guys know me, I think at this point pretty well. And I just couldn't buy the sad, but I had a lot of those friends that were just like, they just read everything and they didn't go out and they were like serious about everything. And so I think that verse is about all that perspective for me. Is that helpful?
It is. So I chose that because your lyrics, there's never any fat on your lyrics. It's like every word has a meaning behind it. And what I found, and as much as your words have meant to me throughout every album that you've made back when I first started listening, 2004, is that right?
That's really nice of you to say, Rick. I'm like thinking back to all my words and I'm like, oh, there's some crappy things in there. I'm like now trying to find some fat. There's definitely fat.
But like I can say that because when we sat down and really started discussing your music on film, I didn't know you put this amount of thought into every single lyric. So there may be fat that you think, but when you look at it in terms of you need every word in that sentence to convey that message.
Well, that verse is one of those like you just grateful that those combinations of things found their way out and said the thing you wanted it to say. They don't all go that way, right? There's like when those nuggets like find their way to piece together, you're like, you're so excited because you're kind of when I'm writing lyrics, I'm trying to entertain myself a little bit too and find things that I think are fun or clever, but also have depth. And it's really hard to find those. It's why they don't always, there's not a lot of those that all find their way. And that's true of any song, right? You think about like great songs, like there's those like zingers where you're just like, oh, that's so good. Like, how did he come up with that? Those are, Paul Simon's songs are filled with that stuff. Like just these things where it's like playful and it's topical, but it also has crazy depth and it has multiple meanings. Like there's, you guys know the song "You Can Call Me Al."
Of course,
that song has so much more depth to it than I think most people realize. When I was in my 20s, I didn't realize what that was really about, but in my 40s and 50s, I'm like, oh, this is me now. I'm in middle age.
Completely agree.
And it's like you unpack that song, and holy moly.
He did a disservice by having Chevy Chase be in the music video because they made it almost comical.
I agree. They kept it really light, and but who wants to hear a serious song about middle age?
No, right?
No one's going to put that song on. So he packaged this like song about middle age anxiety into this very approachable pop song with sort of like a couple of weird mixed metaphors, and you put it out to people in a way that's very approachable. And then for the last 30 years, I've listened to that song and found it's like peel away the onion of that thing. It's like, I'm a big Paul Simon fan, so I probably would have found my way to that if it wasn't a pop song, but that's what's so nuts about that song. That was a huge hit. And like, you could be my bodyguard, right? It's like, everyone's like, it's just like this really upbeat song. And you read the lyrics and it's like a guy having an anxiety attack in the middle of a foreign country. You're like, wow, like that's pretty great. I mean, that's really, really cool.
So you find these lyrics and they come to you, but when you look at the theme of a song, to me, like, how do you write a song like Home about going out to chase your dreams and careers? And then and this is how I take it. So if you didn't write it like this, we can unpack that. But I take it that you have this wife at home that wants you, hey, come home with me. But you can't because you got this big dream that you have to chase.
It's
right?
more, it's not quite so. It's a more of a general like an idea of home. It's sort of playing off type a little bit. Like home is usually about, I miss my like another sunny day. I'm really far away. I'm lucky. Like that's the Bublé version of it. I'm like, Bublé, come on, let's be real. Like, we all we love home. We want to be home, but man, we got that fire. We want to get out. We want to experience things. And that song is really about the balance of those two things, right? Even the thing at the end is really rattling off all my homes, right? Is
so
like,
cool.
Kind of playing through all those things
it.
and rushing through those, right? So, but no, that's like, I'm trying to get to a truth there, which is like, I love my family and my home, but like, man, I just got to go out and go do stuff and get something done. I got things to do. I got to go,
So combining those two themes, like the theme of that song and then writing the lyrics to that, how do you have the discipline to keep that on track? And like I said, going back to your lyrics, not having any fat, like there is no fat in that song. Like it is, every line has a meaning thematically to that song.
It's got a Billy Joel ripoff in it too. I don't know if you know the line.
No.
I totally swiped it.
Which one?
One of my favorite Billy Joel songs is The Entertainer. Do you guys know that song?
Of course, yeah.
And there's a line in Home that says, I'd love to stay, but I've got bills to pay. Please don't take me home. I love that. He says that in The Entertainer. I can't remember exactly the line, but like this notion of like, and I've got bills to pay, so I just don't have the time, right? He's like busy, busy, busy. He's talking about like being on the road and everything. And I ripped that off, but I just love that line. It's just like, it's just so it's so blunt.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
that he would say something like that, and he's him, and like that's just the relatability of that. I always thought was really cool.
A lot of your songs, sorry, I'm totally dominating the conversation, Eric. And I know we just, have 10 hours of film of you talking about this, but I think it's a different audience that sees this. So if you take like Davenport,
We swim in the gray. We take pause for the all. We watch dog days repeat. And we stay close through the fall.
it's a moment in time, but you can expand that past that moment in time. It's obviously songs from quarantine that you did, but like Davenport really could be about any hardship that you're going through.
Yeah, sure.
So how do you mix that up with taking this moment but making it broad enough? Like if you just say, hey, this is a song about quarantine, everyone gets it. But you can also say, hey, this is about a breakup, this is about a hard day at work or whatever, everyone could get that as well. So how do you attack it from that level?
By intention, not putting COVID in it, right? I mean, the record's called Songs from Quarantine, so you know where I am. But yeah, you want to be specific in the feelings. I think, or I should speak for myself. I try to be very specific in my intent and what I'm trying to say, but I don't want to be so specific where I alienate people to not find a way into those things. I'm Paul Simon is like my hero as far as lyric writing because he does that very well. He gives things a place and a time and a place, and will mention streets and things like that. But there's still a lot of room for me to bring my own experiences to them and interpret those words in my own context. That's the beauty of songs, right? These somebody's very specific story, but they become your stories, right? You hear lyrics and this is their thing, but it's really like your soundtrack to what's happening to you at any given time. And it's how I think we process and deal with things is through music a lot of times.
You have a way of visually, and it's very much in the Paul Simon way where you could visualize what you're seeing and the lyric, and forgive me if I'm going to get it wrong, but you talk about your daughter going
I know the one you're talking
wide
about,
infinity lines.
And she rides. Her wheels make wide infinity lines. We look ahead to question marks and shut down parks and story arcs. Oh, yeah, she rides.
That's one of Sue's favorite lyrics in that song too. Yeah.
Are those the moments that you go, this is it, I got it? Let me put this in there and make it work.
I don't know if that one was. I just remember her doing, just doing this over and over and not a care in the world. And we're walking, trying to avoid people from breathing on us and stuff. And the kids are just like, oh, we're going to the park, So, looking to the kids to say, all right, how are you getting through this so easily? That's what that song is basically like. Okay, so we're wound up about this and terrified, but clearly you've got a better way of dealing with this. And so that song's really about like watching how smart your kids are and how well they deal with things,
But you could easily just say she's riding her bike in a circle or up and down
boring.
the driveway. No, I get that. But so how does your brain like write that?
It's like I'm trying to entertain myself a lot of times with saying things in ways that are a little more interesting, right? Like my daughter rides a bike on the street on but I want to find poetry, in that. Like, what are the words that get to the crux of it? Because I need rhymes too in order for the song to play. But what is, I think I love finding the poetry in things because we experience life through our own kind of poetry in our heads. So I want to try to express those feelings through words where I can. And sometimes that's in finding these little twisty ways of articulating it. I also love Paul Simon, again, not to over Paul Simon this conversation, but he takes the ordinary and puts it into poetry. And you can unpack the words of that poetry and you listen again and again and again, and you discover things. They resonate in different ways. They mean different things to you. When you put things in poetry, I do think they have the ability to kind of unfold themselves for people in different ways at different points in their life. So that's what his music has done for me, and I still listen to his music a lot. And that's what I'm trying to pull off with some of that stuff. And
successfully.
hopefully in a meaningful way,
Successfully,
not just like in a
Yeah.
clever way or a trite way. I want to capture a thing and a thought in its like best, like in its truest form. But I
Yeah.
find the truest way to do it is through some kind of, rudimentary poetry that, I'm not, I love words and playing with them, but, I wasn't a great student or anything. So I'm finding things that have meaning for me,
And you let us behind the curtain a little bit with some of that, with showing us your journals,
The
like
journal,
you're
yeah.
writing your lyrics, lyric journals and stuff like that to
Yeah.
release play. And it was fun to watch you go through that because you're like, oh, what is this? Oh, that's part of this.
Yeah.
Oh, where is that? Or is it, oh, it's this, like just part of that process and how it comes together.
It's funny to see early versions of songs and like some of the wacky words that were originally there. I love seeing other songwriters' notes. Like there's a Paul Simon lyric book I have, and there's like the scribbles that he had. Like, oh, whoa, what happened in that scribble? Where did that thing click? It's like that Get Back documentary, right? When you watch Paul McCartney write Get Back, you're like,
Yep.
oh, come on, right? Like, how does that not just knock you out, right? Watching these just watching things find their way. Holy moly,
It does, but it also sometimes ruins it for me. Like what I liked about what you do, like I just imagine you pining over every word and scribbling and doing this. When I was watching it Get Back, I was like, so they're just making this up on the spot.
I don't think they fussed over lyrics the way I thought they did, and but
I
it
agree.
works, right? It hits, but that's them, and I'm I can't even believe I'm having a conversation about me and the Beatles. That makes no sense. That's just dumb. But for me, what I want to try to do is I want the words to have depth, and I want to peel away. I want to offer the opportunity for someone who's hearing to peel away at what I'm getting at. Like, do you know the song Grenadine on my first record?
No, I don't believe I've ever heard that.
That song that took a long time to get that down. I was trying to write a song, a nostalgia song about where I grew up. And the rhyme structure I started with was really kind of annoying, and fitting everything in was like a puzzle. But I feel like when my mom heard that, it really hit her, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it. That's for that song. It's like a tribute to where I grew up, right? So the fact that it hits for her emotionally. I just saw her like 3 days ago, and she's like, oh, Grenadine. Just love that. She said something like that. I'm like, oh, that's like great. That it worked. It like success. That
Before we get too far away from Davenport that you referenced, because there are pieces of this that were touched on in various ways throughout this call. I don't know if the proper word would be like fortuitous, but I was blown away at the fact that the PA that we brought
was that crazy as hell? Oh my
crazy.
God.
And
I know exactly what you're talking about. That was
when
nuts.
you started. No, what's nuts is when you started playing that, the three of us, we all looked at each other and all of us opened up our arms and we're showing the chills on our arms.
Hair standing up. So
standing up.
So to give a little some context there. So we hired a PA to come to help
Never met
on
her.
set. Yeah, never met her on set to
she was so nice.
film.
She was awesome.
Oh yeah, incredible. So we're literally meeting for the first time in the driveway at your place, right? For the morning that we're going to start shooting, and it was Sarah, right? Was her name? Was that correct?
Sure.
Am I remembering that right? Yeah. So yeah, we'll come back to that. This is what editing is great. So we all get out of the car and we start talking, and we're just going through some various things, and we start referencing music, and Sarah goes,
it is Sarah.
Sarah
Good job,
goes,
Eric.
I thank you. So she goes, is this the PJ Loughran that made the Davenport album? And we're like, yes, this is. And she goes, this is her word. This is mental. She kept saying, this is mental. I just, for the last couple of years, have fallen in love with this album with my father. Like they had created a bond over that album.
In Ireland. Don't forget that. That's the big,
in Ireland.
Craziest thing. Oh yes. With the thickest, strongest accent that straight out of Ireland. I was just like, this is crazy. This is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, those days were really special, guys. I've told you guys this, but that was the gratitude from me and us is you'll never know. It was an amazing couple days.
Same here. Like, you will never know. I have to stop myself from texting you all the time being like, dude, best days of my life.
But and I touched on this, but it's such a testament to you and your family. So meaning to let some strangers into your space to be able to, you know what I mean? So
some drunk strangers. Let's not forget that.
But it's a two-way street in that regard, right? It was only that amazing because of how like open you and your family were to having us in the space and participating.
Like I said, you guys, you came in so genuine and warm. You made it really easy for that to happen in a way that it could have been really awkward, right? Like, it's like we had 5 cameras and all that gear, and I mean, and asking me a lot of personal stuff, but no, it was really wonderful.
So we're starting to get traction on this podcast, and so which means we're now getting negative comments. In which the great thing about negative comments, you start going, all right, well, let me see if there's some merit to it. One of the biggest negative comments we get is, why do you wait till an hour and a half to ask, what's your defining moment? So PJ.
Well, we kind of talked about him. I mean, this is a crazy thing. I mean, because I haven't watched all of it because there's a lot of it that you guys have already produced, but I've watched a good amount of it. Eric, I heard you talking about your friend who had passed, and that was a really touching bit. And, Rick, I didn't know. I think your father passed away. I didn't know that, and that was, there's I'm learning about you guys through some of those things as well, which has been really touching.
Thank you.
I don't know. There's a lot of defining moments. There's like things that happen, and they set you on a kind of a direction. So I don't know. There's been a lot of them. Maybe it might be better if you pick a thing and I could give you a defining moment in those things,
Let's take this in 3 phases. The first, entrepreneurship. Was there a defining moment that you go, this is it, this is what I'm going to do?
It's never like, this is what I'm going to do, right? It's like, this is what I'm going to do next or now, right? It never feels like, I don't think nothing feels like life defining, right? It's not like one thing that I'm going to commit my entire existence to. That's not how I've ever been. I've never thought that way about something. Usually it's, I'm going to commit myself to this now, and my goal is to achieve X. Like, I want to see this through to a certain point. Like, even music, I gave myself 5 years. I'm like, I'm going to do this for 5 years. I said that to Sue. I said that all my friends, like, let's see how far I can take this for 5 years, and what kind of experiences am I going to have through this, and like, let's see where it goes, right? So on entrepreneurship, it was realizing that I needed to start making money, and I needed to, and I had this little itch to start a business, and was inspired by seeing someone I knew kind of do it. And I think I'm naturally very competitive and a little petulant, and I sort of I'm like, well, he's doing that, I can do that, I can do that better, right? Like, just that, like, here we go.
Was there a point on your first venture there, right, in entrepreneurship? Was there a point where you remember going like, "Oh, this is successful"? Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm a successful entrepreneur at this point.
Oh,
by definition.
I'm still waiting for that feeling like, yes. I would say when we sold the first company, that was kind of nuts. Yeah. That was a feeling like, holy moly, I didn't F this up. This is right. We did it. And it feels like done and defined, right? So there's definitely not a moment where I'm like, wow, I'm a successful entrepreneur. I think typically I'm spending time thinking like, oh God, I got to figure out how not to not work. Like, it's mostly I'm in it trying to get to a place. I don't have a lot of time to sit there and think like, well, we've accomplished everything we've set out to do now. I'm done. Right. It's never, I never feel like that. It's, maybe I should more often. Maybe, I should. It's something I have to figure out about myself.
To that, do you take stock and go, I'm happy with what we've achieved?
Yeah, I think sometimes. I think, what's been happening recently for me has been this thing like, so I'll give you an anecdote. When I was growing up, I had one of my two very close friends who were both artists also, and we were very competitive with each other, right? We were trying to outdraw each other. I know that sounds so nerdy, but we really were. We're like, and then they'd be like, whoa, whoa, like we were always trying to outdo the other. And I remember one of my friends, Sam, who's still, arguing with my best friend. I talked to him last night, and I was always envious of how laser beam focused he was on his goal. He wanted to be an animator at Disney. He was going to make a Disney movie. That was like that's all he talked about. And I remember always thinking like, man, I don't have that. I'm not like, I'm going to be a blah. Like there was like a lot of things I was interested in being or trying and doing. Yeah. I wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to know what that felt like, but I also had that itch to be a musician. And there's a lot of interesting things out there. And I always felt like, man, maybe I should have like fully just chased one thing. I had that like in the back of I didn't like say I wasn't ready to drop everything and be like, boom, I'm going to go do that. But it was like this notion of like, oh, what if I had been like just doing this one thing from when I was 16 years old and was just like a machine, right? Like a lot of successful people that we've seen. And I think more recently I've kind of come to realize like, oh, this was the right path. Like, I think this was right for me, and I'm grateful. It feels fulfilling at this point to know, it's all working out for the most part. Like it's all, not to say that like we don't have bumps and things that we have to deal with or whatnot, but like, oh, this whole like thing, I think this was actually right. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
Or maybe the chaos of it was like, or maybe the kind of, maybe I was supposed to do 6 things or whatever,
Right.
Right.
Or maybe it all, there's a logic to all of it together, And I think there is. I feel more confident that I took the right path in not taking one path, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
PJ, what's next for you on all levels?
Oh man.
You started your next album yet? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the next one's going to be an EP. It's 6 songs. It'll have lots of strings on it. It's going to be a little quieter than the last one. I have to dig in and find time to get that done. I've got it all sketched out. I just have to do it.
Feel free to send any music my way that you want me to hear, because
I know these got to be
an hour away. Yeah.
100%. I just got to get them a little further along first. How is this going? How is this podcast thing going?
Crazy. In all honesty, we kind of just did it. Like we were sitting on.
By the way, is that a movie theater in your house? Is that where you're?
Yeah.
Like notices. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Eric, I don't know where Eric is.
I'm in my studio.
Is that your studio?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He built it.
It's a recording studio or it's a editing?
Yeah. It's a recording studio.
It's really cool. It's a great space.
Thank you. I'll send you a picture of the space. I think you'll appreciate it.
Jealousy, studio envy. You see my studio? It's just like a bunch of
you want
things.
You want me to build your studio? I do that.
I don't want to pay for it. I have no interest in buying gear at this point. Thank God I can make music and not have to like spend $100,000 on stuff.
Yeah, like, learned that during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you guys for having me. I absolutely love the time with you. So, thanks for including me in this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we done?